which is also a public hearing, introduce and waive the first reading of ordinance number 853, city-initiated zoning text, number ZTA 2201, amending the planning and zoning code related to accessory dwellings, ADUs, and floodplain regulations and density bonus. Sean?
Thank you. Mayor and Council, we're introducing and waiving the first reading of ordinance number 853. This is one of the steps, not only due to state legislative changes, but also in terms of moving forward with our cottage home program that we have grant funds for, to establish proper regulations to be able to enhance that program as we start developing that particular program. The state legislature enacted accessory dwelling unit legislation in 2017, 18, and 20 to reduce regulatory barriers and cost, streamline approval, and expand potential capacity for these ADUs in response to the California's housing shortage. A summary of state laws and changes are summarized and attached to the report, so we won't go in depth into that. The state ADU law does preempt local ordinances, and cities must implement these laws with the limited exceptions. So basically our existing second dwelling unit ordinance is obsolete at this point, null and void. So we're having to basically defer to the state law in order for us to process applications, review requests for ADUs. So with the implementation of this ordinance, this will allow us to have a guideline and guidance in terms of processing applications for accessory dwelling units. So I have provided some information on what an accessory dwelling unit is and then what also a junior accessory dwelling unit is. Most of this ordinance is almost verbatim, not necessarily verbatim, but pretty close to verbatim of state law. So it's very consistent. It has to be consistent with state law. This document has to be submitted to HCD once the council approves it to ensure its consistency. Staff worked with Self-Help Enterprises to develop this ordinance. And so I do have some information on here regarding the ordinance amendment. And the reason why there's information regarding floodplain regulation and density bonus is just addressing the term ADUs in those two sections of the code. So there's no substantial change to floodplain regulations or density bonus. It's a rather just an update to include ADUs language into those particular sections of the code. So with that, for respect to time, if you have any questions in particular to the ordinance, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you. But there are some highlights we bulleted in the staff report, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions from the council? Okay.
One thing.
Okay.
It says RMD zoning designation with alley access. So are we saying that only houses or residential areas that have alley access can put on an ADU or a JADU?
That is what we have. That's what we have proposed in the code to be consistent with the cottage home program and some of the challenges with the way the law is written in terms of the allowances for garage conversions and parking requirements. It becomes very challenging in certain housing areas where you don't have access, side yard access, anything of that sort. Because junior ADUs can be attached or basically part of the existing house where you can maybe convert a bedroom of a house into a separate efficiency unit, but triggering parking requirements with garage conversions, what that would look like in a neighborhood with no access to an alley, where garages are typically in the alley. If you convert that, then you may lose some of that visual impact in terms of converting garages. What would that look like if you converted garages?
But can't any residential home have an ADU by right? I mean,
no, not necessarily. No.
I just have a problem saying that only if you have an alley access you can put one of these on. I don't think that's right.
Can't you get around it with putting a breezeway?
You could put an ADU in the back of a lot. The concern is, and the restriction, or the concern is when you do that, where are they going to add additional parking? Because they already meet, like for a single family residential subdivision, a 2-car garage covered and having uncovered offsite is required. So if they have to add additional parking, where is that additional parking going to go? And putting the unit on is not necessarily the challenge, it's the additional parking requirements, without putting those additional parking spaces onto the streets.
Okay, so let's say, let's take a street like Hillview Lane. They have huge backyards. Now, because they don't have an alley access, they cannot build an ADU on their properties.
No, they would not be able to.
I just, there's gotta be something else we can do for that. To say that only certain people, if you're in Coalinga and you have access to an alley, you're the only ones who are gonna be able to build an ADU, while if you're on Hillview, or well, most of the higher end part of Coalinga, you can't build an ADU because you don't have alley access. I think there's got to be some way that we can find a way around that.
I mean, that's definitely an option. We did have a second dwelling unit ordinance that allowed for those additional units to be built. It's a matter, I guess the big question is, how do we address parking and how do we address garage conversions of units? Because an ADU includes the ability to convert a garage. So if you convert a garage, like a 2-car garage, you're gonna have on-street you'll have parking in front. But the challenge is, how do we leave the appearance of not impacting the entire neighborhood and how it looks by converting the garage and enclosing the garage?
There's a few houses here in town, I know, I've seen it, where they leave the front exactly the same, and they build right behind the door. They just seal that door so it can no longer work. That way it doesn't change the appearance.
That's something the council could consider if they'd like.
Because there's a house on Third Street, I believe, the garage is made into.
Well, there's a lot of, what
What-
we call it, legal conversions.
Yeah, what does
town.
it do to anything that's there now?
What?
This doesn't change anything that's there now, though.
It doesn't change anything there now, it's what the regulations would allow.
Right. Anything built from now on, exactly. But I'm kind of in agreement with Adam on that. It's like, most of these units like that you're gonna put in your backyard would probably be family or something like that, so, it's kind of hard saying you have to have an alley, to me. Now, is that against this, is that one of the
No,
state law
it does
ones?
allow you to have those exceptions because the law does allow you to establish areas that you allow ADUs. So it doesn't have to be just blanketed throughout the city and where you allow them. So if the council would like to open it where any residential property could do an ADU, we can do that. And we'd have to look to see, and I think depending on how substantial the change would be, whether we could bring it back for the second reading with some of these amendments.
We couldn't make any like substantive changes.
So we'd have to bring it back. Okay. So if so we definitely want some feedback now, because then we can renotice it and we can bring it back to the council for approval. That's not a problem at all.
We could continue the public hearing.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Let's just
Make
continue.
changes, bring it back?
we haven't
Okay.
even opened the public hearing yet, so.
No, but we can open it, we can continue it to the next meeting, and then you could take comments if you wanted, but otherwise we'll just continue it, and then we can bring it back.
Okay. Okay, we'll do that. We're gonna go ahead and open the public hearing now. Is there anybody like to say anything about the ADUs or the junior ADUs? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and continue till the next meeting on this ordinance. on
Well,
this.
Mayor, we want to continue the conversation to make sure staff is getting what direction the council would like in terms of changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to change?
So right now, we can basically open it up, so not have the limitation on alleys in particular, so we can definitely address that. Is the council comfortable with garage conversions for any garage in town?
I am.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna do something like that, I'm sure that's an open up, yeah. I think so.
Any requirements for the garage conversion?
I mean, not really. I mean, I look, we have a rental crisis in this town right now. There is 0 rentals on the market right now. And we have tons of people who want to move here, especially from the Bay Area and San Diego and LA, so
Not only that, it would just,
go for it.
not only that, it would just ease the high amount of cost that a house is going for, so it'll ease kind of, the property, so, yeah.
Now, does that include, let's say, for instance, you've got a street that's got one driveway in the front. All the rest of them don't. Everything's through an alley access. Does that still include being able to put a driveway in your front yard as long as there is one in the neighborhood?
The driveway, the way we have our driveway policy is that it has to lead to a garage. So it can't just be a driveway for a parking slab in the front.
Can it now, does it have to be an actual garage, or can it look like a garage? Which is the same thing as putting a wall in front of the door so you can't see what's inside. Would that be the same thing? Just curious.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about trying to build an accessory dwelling, is that you're talking basically being able to
Right.
build an
and-
accessory dwelling
And still be
unit?
able to put parking if you're gonna take up, if you have an alley and you take up your parking that's in the back, would you be able to add it to the front? And still make it look like a garage, but,
That's up to you guys. I mean, in terms of putting a driveway in, the goal is not to create parking slabs for just being able to park in the front yard. Especially if there's no
some people do
driveway.
it, they'll expand out their driveway or move the driveway, put it as secondary for RV.
Yeah.
Most of them have an RV parking.
I kind of think we're setting ourselves up for failure to a point, because if we let any garage be built into a room, people will be doing that, and then putting rooms on there, and then they add more people to the house. And then we're just gonna get overwhelmed with parking, and we're gonna have all kinds of problems.
Well, and also, now you have a difference, now you have a J8, you have a junior 8 accessory dwelling unit, which is attached, but these are individual living units. These are not adding a bedroom, like converting a garage to a bedroom. You're literally converting a garage. It has to have separate access. It cannot come from the house. It has to come from like
It
the
would be
side
like
door.
mini houses.
What?
It would be like a mini house.
It's a house inside of a house, essentially. And it would basically be a junior ADU is what that
And
would
then you could rent
basically
that
be.
out.
What?
Then whoever owns it could rent it out.
They could rent that separate unit out, yes.
Now, could they do that? And all the areas, the whole area in Coalinga is not able to be rented, is it?
It would, based on the conversation right now, that would be the case. You'd be able to do that. Any garage could be converted to a second unit as long as they can meet the criteria, which would be just off-street parking.
So I could build this huge house right here and put a whole bunch of rentals in it.
You can only have up to 2. There's limitations on how many ADUs you can have. You can have an ADU and a junior ADU, that's all you
I
can
would have to
have.
be against that.
For how
because-
many square feet?
I'm sorry.
I'd have to look and see exactly in the ordinance what the square footage is, but there is square footage requirements. The state dictates minimums, and then there's maximums.
Yeah,
But they've got to meet other requirements in terms of setbacks, lot coverage, other things too. It's just the unintended consequences of garage conversions without providing parking is vehicles on the streets.
And we have a lot of parking problems already.
So, I mean, I'm just putting it out there, but it's up to the council to decide, how we handle whether you only allow, a 2-car garage, half of it to become an ADU. Maybe so then you maintain at least some type of parking. But I think if that's what you guys want to look, I can bring back some language that might address the garage conversions, if that's what you guys are looking at. I can double check on the parking restrictions to see how the parking would look if we converted the garages. Because garage conversions are permitted in this, but typically it's gonna be on a detached garage. Because it's most alley access, you're gonna have garages off the alleys.
Right.
Because I mean, like, what's different than being a family home and you have you have 5 kids and all of a sudden all of them drive. They're all gonna have a vehicle. So the parking, no matter what, if there's a junior or mini, their parking's always gonna be a problem because there's families that have 5 kids and all 5 kids drive. They have an extra family in there. They all drive. So I just think that the parking, it's just gonna be a problem no matter future or whatever. I think that's, the more the family kids have, the more probably vehicles they have. So, if they're being able to do it, we could do it, I think.
I just have a problem with having houses or doing it like that, because people build a house and they don't expect somebody to build something on it and then rent it out to somebody next door, because we're gonna have code code problems, because you're gonna have renters right next to somebody that's built a really nice house, and then you've got two renters over here that's not taking care of their grass, and there's weeds all over the place, and you have a nice house right next door to it, and it just brings down the whole community.
So would a middle ground between what you guys want, from what I understood, what Adam was saying, wasn't necessarily a garage conversion initially, but maybe like a tiny home that you purchase and you live on Hillview and you want to add it to the backyard, some sort of detached ADU, and then allow garage conversions for those that are detached from the homes, but garages that are attached to the primary residence couldn't be converted?
Kind of, I mean, if it could even the mayor, Ramsey said that, if we could put an ordinance where they have to keep up the
We
beautification.
have them now and they don't do it.
Well, and the ADUs aren't necessarily going to create some of that problem because these are accessory dwelling units. They're not primary dwelling units. So they're going to be accessory to the primary residence. So it's either going to be attached inside the residence as a separate unit, but attached to the existing residence, or it's going to be a separate detached residence. So the primary residence is still, most likely going to be responsible for maintaining the property. And as we do the cottage home program, it's going to be designed really to be able to fulfill the alley access, or if we decide that we can put these in the back of homes, they just have to have their own separate access. So a property would have to be able to provide adequate access to that, separate from the primary residence. So it's got to come from the front of the lot. So if you build it in the back, they got to be able to access it from the front and get to the back without going through the primary residence. Same thing if you convert a garage, it's got to be able to come through the side door, not through the home itself.
Exit and entrance, basically.
Yeah.
We got a question?
Does this have to change anything with the zoning, single family, now you're multifamily?
No, state law is not recognizing that. They're basically allowing second units to be on any residentially zoned property.
So I mean, all these contractors coming in and remodeling, they could come in, remodel a house, turn around, flip it, and now they're renting out 3 rooms?
No, you can't. It's not single room occupancy. It is their accessory units. So like say you have, I guess a perfect example is there's houses on South Coalinga Street that have basically all their alley loaded that back up to that industrial area. And they have an additional bedroom in the back. I've gotten requests to convert that bedroom to an accessory dwelling unit, and then basically they would access that unit separately from the residence. So it's a separate dwelling unit. So it's got its own kitchen. It's got to have all of the requirements of like a small efficiency apartment. So it's not like renting bedrooms out. It's got to be separate living quarters. So there's a lot of requirements in terms of what that actually is defined as. So it's basically just saying, hey, here's a home, and we're going to either have a detached unit added, or we're going to convert a bedroom or a certain space to a livable unit. So they're not connected to the home by entry at all. It's all exterior.
Well, I guess my question was just these contractors that are fixing up all these homes right now, would they be able to come in, remodel the home, add a dwelling in the back, and now they turn around and sell a house,
Yes.
residential with 2
Yes. Yeah. And this has all come through the state. This has all come through the state housing laws. That's basically requiring us to implement these ordinances. So
And it would have to have a restroom, everything would have to be.
yeah,
within-
kitchen, restroom, bedroom, everything. Yeah.
The only thing I'm having a problem is with the garage. Putting I don't have any problems with the ones in the back, but I would have a problem with the ones in the garage. So is there any way you can work on something like that?
Yeah, I can kind of highlight the garage conversion sections of this, and we can kind of discuss that at the next meeting if you'd like, and go through that.
And then we could tweak it a little bit there at the next meeting too, couldn't we? Or
I'm
with
sorry,
your,
what?
we could tweak a couple of them.
Yeah, I can bring back some examples, and I think as long as the examples are there and we choose one, I think we can move forward with the ordinance going to the next steps.
Yes. We do need a motion, though, to continue the public hearing to August 18th.
Okay, one quick thing. Do we have any cost estimates yet for the J ADUs, the junior ADUs?
We don't. We're actually currently working with an architect. We're working through the insurance issues on the contract, and then we'll probably be bringing a contract to the council for an architect firm. We didn't get any responses from our RFP that went out, so we've reached out to some firms to see if they'd be willing to work with us. We did find a kind of a custom home builder out of Fresno area that is willing to kind of work with us to see if they can put together some plans for us. So we're kind of in the negotiation phase right now, and then we're hoping to bring a contract back relatively soon to get that underway. But we don't have any estimates yet.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until 18th.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Singleton,
Aye.
Mayor Ramsey.
Aye. Okay, next we'll go to item number